Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Next Generation of Energy, a podcast brought to you by RoseWater Energy Group. I'm your host, Tyler Kern. Welcome to another episode of the show. We're thrilled that you've joined us for this one. Today, we are talking about the 10th birthday for RoseWater Energy Group. We're going to be talking about the origin of the company, what led Joe and Mario to start this company, and so much more, where things have been, where things are going in the future. It's going to be a really exciting episode, and I'm thrilled that you've joined us for it. And so now I'm going to introduce you to Joe Piccirilli. He's the founder and CEO of RoseWater Energy. Joe, welcome.
Well, thank you, Tyler. 10 years seems like only yesterday some of the time, and then it seems like forever some of the other times. But thanks for having us here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm thrilled to talk about the last 10 years because you're right. Sometimes time flies and sometimes it can feel like it has crept by slowly, I'm sure. So we'll talk all about that here in the coming moments. But we're also joined today by Mario Bottero. He is the founder and director of RoseWater Energy. Mario, welcome.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation as well. Thanks.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, let's dive on in here. So, Joe, let's start off here. What prompted you and Mario to start RoseWater 10 years ago? What was kind of part of the driving force behind why you started the company?
Well, interestingly enough, Mario and I met when, independent of each other, we made an investment in a battery company. It turned out to be not a very good investment, but an investment in a battery company. And Mario, his partner, also one of our partners, Marco, and myself started to talk about batteries in general and, where this company we invested in should go. And then we began a discussion of how to use energy storage in the residential world. And Mario and Marco both came from the world of developers, and I came from the consumer electronics residential world. And we were just chatting away, and we talked about it, and we talked about it. And then Mario, Marco, and myself, one day, I think it was in September of 2012, decided, okay, let's go for it. And I have to admit, and I'm going to have Mario recount the beginning as well, not only did it start what we think has become a very good company, but it also began what has become an incredibly good friendship. So it's really rare that you can have that. Mario, how's your recollection of 10 years ago?
Yeah, listen, at the beginning, we saw, energy storage as being a huge growth opportunity. And Joe had the idea. I said, listen, my background is this, and these high-end homes doing the audio video stuff and doing all kinds of components in houses and home controls and everything, and I really think there's an opportunity here. And me and Marco were just like, Joe, you know what? God bless, let's go. Tell us what to do. We're here, And then we started to develop the product out, and it was really hard. We thought it would be pretty simple, and it ended up being a lot of work. It took us like 4 or 5 years before we really had a product that we could sell and that we could comfortably sell. So it was quite a challenge, and we persevered. We always had a philosophy of be the best. Like, we have to put the best product out there. It's not going to be cheap, but it's going to be the best, and we stuck to that, and we continue to stick to that. And it's worked out. It's worked out very well for us so far.
Tyler, you would be amazed if you would have seen the first three or four prototypes that we brought out. As Mario pointed out, we really, and this was my fault, I'm going, how hard could this possibly be? And we found out exactly how hard. I mean, and we hired what we thought were great engineers. I mean, names that we'll leave unsaid, but and we ended up with product that was embarrassing. It was sad because, as Mario pointed out, we didn't want to value engineer this. We wanted to build the best product. And people kept giving us products with compromises, and the compromises were ridiculous. I mean, Mario and I often look back and say, thank God nobody bought one of those. Because they were just something else. But Mario said something that really has driven us. And RoseWater has this philosophy. We have the tagline, "Simply the best." But Mario, Marco, and I, we refused to compromise on anything. People thought we were out of our minds, because we didn't have a price point in mind. We knew it wasn't going to be inexpensive by, all accounts, but it was, nope, if it's not the best, we don't want to do it. And, Mario and Marco were right there. They were just like, I thought I was stubborn about it. Nah, they are.
And at the beginning too, we went show after show, no sale. Next year, went to the shows again, no sales. Went to the shows again, no sales. But we always knew at one point they're going to get it, right? And we were lucky enough that our lives have been pretty good. We were able to fund it ourselves. We didn't have investors to answer to. We didn't have, we weren't doing it just for a weekly check. We were doing it because it was our, a vision that we had, a dream that we had to grow this company. But we went year after year, nothing. And we stuck to our guns. Every year we improved our product. We improved the product that we didn't sell the year before to something better that we didn't sell that year to something better. And then it got to the point where people started to say, hey, you know what? I actually think I can use this. And then trickled there for the sales. And now we get to the point where, we're getting calls constantly, sales. Joe was talking about 3 sales today that happened, or three units anyways. So, it's been exciting. It's been a great ride.
I think one of the other things, Tyler, in the beginning that we saw, if you go back 10 years ago, it was the beginning of, we're going to tie our renewable energy to batteries, and the whole thing about batteries and the house was, how do you integrate a solar panel? How do you integrate a wind turbine, some form of renewable in a residence? And we didn't think that way. We were, wait a minute, power is getting worse and worse in terms of power quality, the fluctuations in voltage. And as we kept automating houses, the microprocessors we put in houses were extremely vulnerable. And no one was talking about that. We were talking about it, and we kept pushing it. Everybody else was going, oh no, tie this to your solar panels or do this with your turbine. And all of those businesses had these momentary rises in success because they were subsidized businesses. And Mario, Marco, and myself, the last thing we wanted was a business that depended on anybody's subsidy. That was just, if it can't stand on its own, then it's not a good business in our minds. And so while the industry was, okay, we've got to have this return on investment, we got to have this tied to renewables, we've got to have this kind of funding and this kind, we stuck to our guns. And as Mario recounts the story, you go out, show after show, you don't sell, sometimes we got, that's sort of interesting. And that's what we got. But we stuck to it.
So in a lot of ways, you've really seen an evolution of the marketplace, and maybe an evolution in terms of how people understand what your product can do for them, right? You've really gotten to see that evolution firsthand as it's happened.
That is for sure. And again, Mario, we'd all talk about it, and we'd go, people think we're just battery storage. Well, no, that's just a thing that we do, and it was, how do you explain what it means to have zero transfer time? How do you explain what it means to have perfect power at all times? How do you explain to people that our unit is engaged 100% of the time, not just when power's off? And that's been a struggle.
Yeah, it's been hard to get a lot of the dealers and the reps to. It's been hard for them to get comfortable with the price point that we have, because clearly their clients, the guy who owns 7 Ferraris, you're having trouble thinking that he might spend some money on this product. So it was them having the issue, because in their minds, they couldn't justify it. And that's what took us so long. It took us that long for them to get comfortable to say, hey, you know what? That is a lot of money, but I think my client needs it now, and it took that long to get there, because again, the client could always afford it. They just weren't comfortable selling it. So it took us year after year after year of convincing them that there's value here. You just have to get comfortable with it. And now they're getting comfortable with it.
Right. And Joe, you and I did a podcast on that at times customers were being done a disservice because people were scared to bring up RoseWater because of the price point, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, quality is your entire focus, and consumers deserve to know what options are out there.
Absolutely. And Mario's point is right on the money. It was, oh, this is too expensive. And it wasn't about the client. People were were selling out of their own wallets. And it's very, very difficult to overcome that. And then, of course, we had to sit down and, what's the first thing somebody who can't make a sale says? Oh, you should build a cheaper one. And we just would go, there is no way we will compromise quality, period. That's never going to happen. And, and I think part of our resolve is what convinced people in the long run. No, we are building it this way. And that's the way it worked. It was very interesting. And again, in that period 10 years ago and for the first 4 or 5 years, battery storage, all these things, everybody was racing to the bottom for price points, and we were going in exactly the opposite direction. No, we're just going to build the best. This is not about seeing who could build a cheaper one.
And almost every year, basically pretty much every show, we came out with a newer version every time. Like, again, sales or not was irrelevant. It was always like, okay, is something better? Is there something better we can implement? And there have been over time, and now we're working with different battery chemistries as well. Like there's always something. We're always looking to say it's the best product on the market right now, but how do we make it better? And we're always looking at that. We always want it to be the best product, always.
I believe that the only people who will build a better product than ours is us, and that's the way we're going to keep it. So,
I like that. I think that's a really good way of putting it and looking at it, especially just with the emphasis on quality and just building the absolute best. And Joe, I'm curious just what the state of the grid was like maybe 10 years ago, because we've talked a lot about where things are now, and what we're seeing across the United States these days. But was it all that different 10 years ago, or was it drastically different?
I think what had happened was, like in many things, the coasts, the East Coast and the West Coast, sort of lead the way for what's going to happen in the country. And 10 years ago was when California and Florida started experiencing power problems due to rapid population growth and growth of houses. I mean, South Florida, where I live, the houses along the intercoastal and along the ocean, those used to be people's winter cottages, 1,200 square feet, and now all of those houses have been replaced with 20,000 square feet or bigger, these gigantic homes. No, I don't think they've built a power plant in Florida in the last 40 years. And so our population went from 7.5 million to 23 million. California, not only were people moving out there and making a lot of money in the tech boom and building these big houses, but then California also decided they would go on this kick to start managing power. And, you let governments manage too much and it becomes incredibly inefficient. So we started seeing that 10 years ago, and now it is spread across the country. That's, all of a sudden, the hot areas, you look at a place like Nashville where 100 families a day are moving into Nashville. I think that's their thing. All of these areas are growing and growing rapidly, and you can't build new power plants. And now with the integration of renewables and people trying to subsidize that onto the grid, renewables make power quality worse, not better, because of their intermittency. And that's what I see. 10 years ago, it was sort of a coastal problem. And, California was kind of our first really big market, in Florida. And now, last month we put 4 in Colorado or 5 in Colorado. I forgot the number a lot. It's amazing. And that's how it looked to me. Mario, any other thing you would add to what the market looked like?
I think just what's we're seeing, or what I think I noticed over the last little while, is it's just more front of mind now. It's more in the press, like especially with all these weather things going on. Power, it's just something you didn't read as much about it back then, whereas now you almost read about it every day. There's some kind of weather thing, and there's some kind of outage somewhere. There's a freeze in Dallas. There's something's going on somewhere. So it's just more front of mind. Because I outside of the grid being 10 years older, I don't know if I would say it's necessarily gotten worse. It's just gotten more noticeable, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm curious, Joe, was there ever a point where you thought, you know what, people might not get it. People might not understand what we're trying to do and the purpose behind it. Or did you always believe and see that there is a market and there would be a growing market for this? It was just about getting the product right and making sure the right people heard about it.
Well, I would be lying if there weren't moments of doubt in my life. But,
that would be superhuman.
Yeah. But one of the things that makes our partnership work with Mario, Marco, and myself is that when one of us isn't feeling it, we're quite analytical and look for what does this look like tomorrow? What does this, because we're always not only analyzing our product, but we're analyzing the market. And everything we saw in what was going on in the market pointed to, yes, this is exactly what we predicted. So the roadblock to our success is really convincing the people who interface with the end users. And we have discussed different strategies for that ad nauseum over the last 10 years. And, fortunately we have managed to get to a point where now people are talking about our product all the time. But I think that it is the partnership and the mutuality of goals that, the RoseWater goals are really a reflection of the RoseWater founders. That is who we are. And that's not going to change. I've been like this way too long. So is Marco. We're not changing. So that's my view of it. It is, if I have a day where I feel like I've gotten the crap kicked out of me, Mario's going to call me in the evening or the next morning, and we're going to talk it through. And that's just the way it is.
I'm also curious, and Mario, I'd love to hear from you on this about because Joe and I have talked about this on the podcast over the last couple of years, but how have the last maybe 2 years, just in terms of supply chain challenges and some of the other things that have come up surrounding the pandemic and some other mitigating factors, how have those challenges compared to maybe some of the challenges of the early years? And where would you put the last 2 years just in terms of the different things that you've had to face and overcome?
Well, I think from our perspective, more the supply chain construction projects have slowed down because they're having issues with a lot of the material that they need for the site. So some of our projects are getting pushed off from that perspective. Our sales growth is getting to the point where we're now being affected as well from supply chain issues. So, it's the problems. Those are the good problems, but they're still problems that we have to deal with. I think, again, what we've noticed in the last couple of years in particular is just the overall acceptance. When we meet with people, before it was a little bit more convincing in terms of where you had to explain the product. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is right away now people, as soon as you mention it, they get it. It's like, okay, I get it. And they still have to sort of overcome that their own mental hurdle of how can I justify this to my client? Because, it just seems like a lot of money. But we've seen the acceptance grow. Supply chain issues are having an impact, again, more so on the site than us. But, it's been a great couple of years, the last couple of years, and actually even the last few months. It's been very strong. So it's been exciting.
Joe, anything you'd add to Mario's comments about that, just given some of the things we've talked about over the last 2 years?
I mean, you sit down and as Mario pointed out, what happens is because as construction gets delayed, people have left deposits on our products that we thought were going to be installed oh, we have stuff that was supposed to be installed over a year ago still because of issues with the rest of the materials necessary to complete. And our product goes into the house when it's nearly finished. So that creates a timing issue. And then in the last 6 to 8 months, our sales growth has outstripped even our expectations. So now all of a sudden, the orders we had placed well in advance are not adequate to keep up with our sales, which is, it's a way better problem, still a problem, but a way better problem.
Right.
But that it's forced us to rethink our supply chain. What's really nice is we are about to bring on a second manufacturing line, which hopefully, parts procurement willing, will start producing sometime in October, which should help mitigate some of our issues. So it's interesting. The shoe's on the other foot now, because it's like we get calls every day. It's crazy. It's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've kind of talked about how the market has evolved, where things were 10 years ago compared to where things are now. Let's talk about where you guys see things heading over the next 10 years. As RoseWater hits its second decade, how do you see the market continuing to evolve? Obviously, demand has grown quite a bit for your product, but as we look at, renewables like you were discussing, and as companies discuss ESG more often, it's becoming more and more top of mind for folks. And so, Joe, where do you see things heading in the next 10 years?
Well, there are some significant factors that are going to determine where it ultimately goes. I mean, Mario mentioned earlier, we are constantly looking at battery chemistries, and a battery chemistry is going to be key to the growth from really large estate size homes to many, to the price points really filtering to a different use pattern, a pattern that is much more controlled, where the units will be off some part of every day and running on batteries, not off. So battery chemistries will play a part in it, and we're looking at a couple of what we think are very promising battery chemistries. I think 10 years from now, we're not sure what battery, we don't know. There might be a totally different battery chemistry 10 years from now that none of us know. I think the acceptance of the power quality 10 years from now will be commonplace. I think that's pretty clear to me. As the market in the past was saying, okay, it should be cheaper, we think the market is going to be ripe for even larger devices than the ones we make. And we've just introduced one that's double the capacity of our current unit. And it's selling nobody's seen one in person, and they keep ordering it. Mario, your view for the future?
Well, I would like to say somewhat self-congratulatory, egotistically, from RoseWater's perspective, we will continue to develop the market in certain categories. I think we've done it to a certain extent so far, and we will continue to hone our business model as we create new opportunities going forward. And a lot of people will continue to try to follow some of the things that we do. And we're good with that. And we're good with being the leaders. And we're good with being the front end. And we're always good with being the most expensive and the best product. So the market's getting better all the time. And we continue to develop new ways to get our product in the field.
There's another person wanting another unit, right?
Tyler, when you think about the future, and I don't know how much our audience keeps track of what's going on in something as simple as lighting. Now the trend in lighting is to have microprocessor control at every bulb. Yeah, that way you can adjust the color temperature of a bulb. So if you're lighting up a piece of artwork, you adjust the color temperature to enhance the colors of the artwork. So you're seeing all of this proliferation. If you've got 100 light fixtures in your house, that's 100 microprocessors that you didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then you're looking at plumbing fixtures that, are touch controlled. Well, those all have sensors that are connected to a network. And, all of that. And then there's the trend towards wellness, where because of the years spent at home with COVID and people getting used to telemedicine, well, now you're going to have things in your house that are monitoring not just the health of your house, but your health.
Right.
And those are all microprocessor intensive. So the need for constant power, constant predictable power, in my mind, is just going to grow exponentially, because once you have these conveniences, you don't want to live without them. And without sounding too crazy, that kind of, in the world of health, if we can correctly monitor people remotely in terms of your blood pressure, all of the things that you go to a doctor's office for now, I don't think there's anything that could lower the cost of medicine more than that.
Right.
It just, so I think for our products, and again, it's self-serving, I think their future is really bright for our kind of product, because it's going to be critical to the functioning of a modern society.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
It just seems to make sense. And when I talk to Mario and Marco, and we can become an echo chamber, which is problematic at times, but all of us have our own networks of people that we talk to that are way far afield from what we do. And, their view of the future is not dissimilar. They just don't know how to solve the problem. That's us. But that, I don't see it going any other way. I don't think there is a trend, despite some people wanting to go back to the Stone Age. I don't think that's going to last.
I think you're right about that. Absolutely. Mario, what do you think for the next 10 years? When you look out, what do you see?
Listen, I see us at the beginning stages of what will ultimately become an explosive growth. The industry it'll be as common as a dishwasher in every house. I see a lot of things that are going to happen. I think it's got to be done a certain way, and I think that again, I think we're on a path that RoseWater, where we think we're going to be the industry leaders in a bunch of different categories, but it's very important, and it only gets more important as every day progresses, and as more issues come, and gas prices go up, and certain things happen, natural gas and coal reduction, and nuclear hopefully gets a little bit more common in the future. But until that happens, we're gonna run into a lot of issues, and power quality and power reliability are going to be even more important. And we're going to be there. We're going to be the guys that have solutions for a lot of different categories, a lot of different applications.
It is amazing, Tyler, what we talk internally about, what markets we want to develop in the future, something it's too early for us to discuss or make public. But it is incredible when you start looking at the lines, the categories of homes and businesses that this affects, and what will be the appropriate marketing tools to get the product accepted in these lines of these different silos of businesses. And we think that, because we constantly think about it, we think we have a lot of answers for the future. And a year from now, we'll be discussing a couple of them on air, because we'll have tested them by then. And it is one of those things where people are noticing. To your point earlier, Tyler, when we discussed this on a podcast a while back, but 20 years ago, a power quality problem was your VCR flashed. The clock on your microwave oven flashed. Well, now your lights don't turn on. That's a whole different league of disturbance. So, and then as we were talking about health, if power quality gets in the way of your health being monitored, people will be outraged, absolutely outraged at that, and scared. So it is incredibly bright for the future. And I think Mario's comment about a power quality device such as ours will be as common in a household as a dishwasher is absolutely correct.
The key, and this is one thing where we've been able to excel and continue to grow, is, and something I learned on our real estate side as well, the market's ready when the market's ready, not when you're ready. So you have to be patient, you have to be deliberate, thoughtful, going through your process, and it may take 5 years. And, you know, I remember there was a company many years ago, a big brand, I forget which one it was though, but they came out and they were like, oh, we're going to sell 10,000 a month through Home Depot. And it was like, no, you're not, you know, like, but that was their business model. Their business model was all our overhead, everything we do. If we're not selling 10,000 a month, you know, this division's going to get shut down. I'm going to lose my job. You know, and again, one thing we learned was when the market's ready, it's ready. Until then, you know, you just got to be patient. So we've been fortunate enough where we can be patient, and we're seeing the fruits of that patience now.
That's a fantastic point. And yeah, and I think really well put, Mario, that like you said, the market is ready when the market is ready, and that's kind of how it feels. And right now, it sounds like demand is sky high for RoseWater, and that's fantastic to hear and to learn about. Guys, as we wrap up this episode, what do you want people to walk away with and know about RoseWater 10 years in? Joe, let me kick it over to you. Any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with here today?
I think if I were going to summarize just one final thought for the audience is that RoseWater is positioned as a solution to a problem and the very best solution available. And as long as Mario, Marco, and I are here, that will never change. There is nothing that will change that. And sometimes, you know, people go, well, you know, you're awfully rigid about that. And the answer is yes, we are incredibly rigid about that. We are the best now, and we intend to be the best forever, is us. That's the message I would like to leave.
Mario, final thoughts you want to leave the audience with here today?
Well, again, I think from my perspective, always, you know, thinking about getting that sale going. And I would just say that we've sold in almost every state. We've sold in St. Kitts as well. We've sold in Mexico, and we sell in Canada. So if there was a dealer or a rep in a state where we've sold and they're not selling, just, you know what? Give us a call. We'll help you make that sale. There are people buying our device all over. And I think a lot of people have to get over the concerns that they themselves have, not their clients have. So we're here to help everybody to get it done, to grow their business along with us growing our business. So we're always happy to help. We're always happy to get on a call. We're always happy to be part of that process and make things easier for everybody.
Well, people have been reaching out to Mario nonstop throughout the podcast, and so we should maybe let him go answer some of those calls. They might even be from you if you're listening to this show. So, well, Mario and Joe, congratulations on 10 years, hitting the double digits, and congratulations, many, many more years ahead of you of fantastic growth and amazing products. And so, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on this episode of the Next Generation of Energy, and talking a little bit more about the past 10 years and where we're going in the future.
Thank you very much,
Tyler. Thank you for hosting. Yep. As usual, you were great at it, and we look forward to doing more podcasts with you.
Well, I'm looking forward to it as well, gentlemen. So thank you once again. And listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of the show. We appreciate it very much. Of course, for more, you can always visit the RoseWater website or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay up to date with the latest. We'll be back soon with new episodes of the show. But for this one, for Joe and Mario, I'm Tyler. We'll talk to you next time.